Attention everyone, we are all transmutating at the moment. Ozone levels are rising. It's changing all of our genes right now at the moment. It's rising to crazy levels. I've already proven it's not air pollution in previous videos. And now I'm going to show you that it does have the capacity to change our traits. So RNA is the DNA photocopy. It regulates cell processes like division, the cell division, differentiation, growth, cell aging, and death, so the whole life cycle. This makes sure that you don't get things like cancer, because cancer is from when your cells don't know when to die, so they just keep making cells and they build up into tumors. So this is a picture of the central dogma of life. It's kind of like one of the laws of biology. It is a law of biology. It's when DNA is transcribed into RNA, mRNA, and then it is translated into proteins. I'm sure you remember this from 7th grade. I used to have to teach it every year. It is the way that your genes are expressed from your DNA. So your DNA has to change into RNA, and then it changes into your expressed traits. So you can have blue eyes, different kinds of like hair and whatever. It's everything. And it's all transcribed from your DNA, but don't forget, it's not your DNA that is necessarily doing it, it's your RNA that is turning into the protein. One more time, it is the DNA that you have, it turns into RNA, and then the RNA is what tells your body to make different proteins. So it tells your body to make this kind of cell or this kind of tissue or anything. It differentiates your head from your arm. So we have a very limited amount of workspace with the whole realm of ozone studies on humans, but we do have a lot of studies on plants. So I found this study. It's about how it changes the roles of the defense hormones when plants are exposed to ozone. So apoplast is the little space between the cell plasma membranes for signaling between the cells. There's something called ROS, which is it's pretty much the way that our immune system works, where it makes ozone and hydrogen peroxide to combat outside invaders, like things it doesn't want. So ROS is the way that our bodies and plants react to stress by creating ozone and hydrogen peroxide. But in plants in particular, it's connected with the response of releasing jasmonic acid, salicylic acid, and ethylene, which are used for tissue healing, slowing down their metabolism to repair the damage, regulating plant cell growth and development, and regulating the life cycle of the cells. So right here it says that ROS signal actually limits the spread of cell death also. So it is the immune response, it is a reaction to stress, but also it is a good thing because it helps to limit the spread of cell death. So just like with the last study that we looked at with apelin production and people inhaling ozone, we can see that it's almost, I'm guessing it is something that has to do with people's DNA of whether or not they can or cannot react positively to ozone. So people might have a really strong reaction, and other people might react really well. Of course, we're just looking at plants, but because plants and people both have the same ROS system, it's not exactly the same, but it's pretty much the same, where we both create hydrogen peroxide and ozone in response to stress, where I could just guess that it's probably the same with humans. That's just interesting that we both have relatively the same immune system, so we probably have the same other functions and reactions to things like the air quality. Okay, here we got another study about wild soybean plants. So they're wild, they're not genetically cultivated, but it does compare it to genetically cultivated versions of this plant. This is about ozone impacts on their RNA specifically. This part says that there is a dramatic difference between the wild plants and the cultivated plants. This part is really cool. It actually says that it depends on the ages as well. So with the soybeans being either wild or genetically cultivated, it also depends on how old or young the plant is. So if the plant is older, it is not as eager to change itself to mold into an ozone environment. It's actually more relaxed and it doesn't really care. The younger plants, they want to quickly change, and they're more robust in their expressed proteins to be able to handle the new ozone environment. I think this part is pretty funny. Obviously, we know that that ozone isn't because of driving habits. I've already proved that in a couple other videos. You can see that they're worried about the ozone levels going above 75 parts per billion. This study was published in 2017, so this is weird for them to say. They said that it was going to be up to 75 parts per billion by the year 2050. You know what the current range is? The range that it went up to last year during 2020 during the lockdown when 40 to 60% of people were not driving. It went up to 80 to 120 parts per billion. And you know how hard it was to find that? That was hard to find that information. So it went up to 80 to 120 parts per billion last year, and they were worried that it was going to get to 75 by the year 2050. And it was, this could also play a part in the whole agricultural reset that I've heard about in the whole conspiracy community about people worried about food shortages. That's a very real possibility. As plants are adapting, it's going to take them some time to adapt to the new changes in air. And maybe we're going to be seeing that in the next couple years as the ozone gets to wildly high levels because it's been raising so sharply the last couple years. This part's pretty much reiterating what the last study said, is that it has good and bad parts where it makes the stress response start up with hydrogen peroxide and ozone production, but it also controls cell death, and this also emphasizes the dual role of ROS both as a signaling molecule and a potential toxin. So it's saying that this study says in the last sentence right there that I just highlighted that it's both good and bad. It depends on the DNA. I don't know what else it would be, like chance. I don't believe in chance. This one says that there's a decrease in photosynthesis, and in my opinion, it's like, no shit, there's a decrease in photosynthesis, the air is changing, it's going to adapt, and that's exactly what it's doing. It's transmutating, it is adapting, it's changing its own genes so that it can adapt to the environment, and it's a different air. And here we have another stating the obvious: development of a resistant soybean variety is possible using current germplasm. So the current genetic material that is present right now is able to change into an ozone environment. So this one's actually interesting. I've been wondering if there is some sort of increase in ozone and some sort of plasma event that gradually comes. I would assume that with fires as a result of plasma or some sort of catastrophic whatever, that the complete biomass would be different. I would assume that the plants would be different, and because they're adapting to a different world, we're not going to have the same kinds of plants in the other kind of world that we would have with the higher ozone environment. So I've been kind of wondering, like, what would that look like? And also, how would the genetically modified demon creations that we've made in plants, how would they be eliminated and purified through something catastrophic like that? So I was thinking, this is actually interesting because the ozone would purify the world, and also through all of the man-made creation plants that we've had through ozone, because it's actually easier for wild varieties of soybeans to adapt to ozone, higher ozone levels, and the cultivated ones actually die out. And then a real quick blurb at the end. It says that they also noticed a difference in the kind of leaves that they had. So leaf architecture, it's like the way the leaf is structured. So maybe they didn't go into it too much, but maybe bigger leaves are better or smaller leaves are better. I don't know. Okay, I'm sure that maybe somewhere along the line of your life you've heard about junk DNA, how there's more than 90% of our DNA code is junk and not used. It's not. It's actually something called transposons. They are used for a lot of things, such as regulating gene expression, generating different cell types and different biological structures depending on where in the genome they insert themselves. So they actually jump all over the place, and they jump wherever they're needed. So it's kind of like stem cells. They can be used for any parts of your body. These transposons can adapt themselves and change themselves into wherever they need to be. So if you're wondering why your spit and your skin cells have different cells but the same DNA, it's because of transposons. They carry the same DNA, but the transposons insert themselves into whatever type of situation they need to be to produce whatever kind of cell it needs to produce. What's interesting is that they actually found a, like, quote unquote super family of transposons that have been with every species since like the beginning of time. I think that's pretty cool because that means that there's DNA that we've shared with everything since other world ages also. It's not just this age that we're in, it's also other transmutations because they said that we've had this junk DNA, this certain amount, about 40% of the junk DNA has been around before before the last explosion of the sun or whatever the fuck. This is all interesting. My question is, would our current DNA that we're able to have expressed in our bodies right now, would this DNA allow us to have the RNA that turns into proteins that would give us the genetic traits of being able to handle a higher ozone environment, or give us a whole another set of genetic traits? Like, would it give us a whole new body that can adapt to crazy temperatures and be able to handle wounds differently? Who knows? And also, would there have to be some sort of other genetic material to step in? And that's where I was thinking junk DNA and transposons, would they be able to jump in and fill in the gaps to give us the traits that we would need to be able to function in this new ozone environment? As we transmutate in this higher ozone environment, as the plants transmutate also, as we see in the plants and the studies, there are going to be people and plants that do not transmutate, and they actually are harmed through all of this. We all pretty much share the same DNA. It is just the RNA that gives us our traits. So it's whether or not it's the RNA from these transposons that jump everywhere, or if it's our current RNA, or yeah, current DNA to RNA. This is about the effect of ozone on people's RNA. So human beings breathing in ozone and the effect on their RNA, the part that gives us our traits. Just to reiterate, the PCR test, the nose swab that they use for this virus, it detects changes in RNA in your lungs. If you don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, you can look at my last science study video, and you can look at the effect of ozone on lung apelin production in the RNA. So that's for the PCR test. And then one more thing is, this is the first ever vaccine that's been made that is for mRNA. They say that it changes your mRNA. So I'm thinking maybe it changes your RNA so that you're not going to react to ozone. Maybe to keep everybody more at bay. Maybe to keep everyone like how they've been this whole time. Because I'm thinking almost that ozone would give us like superpowers, but that's in another video. I think ozone is a good thing. It will hurt people. It's not like it's amazing for everybody, but what I found is that it is good for some people and bad for others. And the only thing that I can think of that's different would be something to do with your expressed RNA. So I think that they don't want people to transmutate. I think that if I was in control, I would want everyone to stay exactly the same. I mean, this is pretty much a perfect, like, this is like a controller's wet dream, this whole Earth world right now, and I think that they want it to stay exactly the way it is. I don't think they want to rock the boat too much. I really truly think that they're just going to keep everything the same, and that they're trying to keep everyone from not transmutating. Anyway, this study isn't really, it's not that long. It's just saying, in short, the very end, the results indicate that short-term high concentration exposures to air pollution, which is what they say ozone is. They already classified air pollution as ozone earlier in the article. Can cause RNA chemical modifications. It can change your RNA. Breathing in ozone can change your RNA, which can change your genetic traits. It can change the way that you act and think, see everything, literally. Alright, I used plants as an example. We looked at how they have a stress response when exposed to ozone, but they also have a positive response that limits the spread of their cell death. It is some good and some bad news for plants, dependent on, we have no proof for that, but I'm guessing it has something to do with their code. Plants' codes also. So humans have DNA that can jump in to do whatever we need and whatever we are exposed to. RNA expresses our traits, and our RNA can change when we are exposed to ozone, which makes me think that ozone is making us have different bodies, possibly over time. We are all transmutating because ozone levels are rising.